driving toward. This is what your walk of faith should have in it, basically. This is what a living sacrifice looks like. And verse 9 is probably one of the most difficult verses to live out if you don't know Jesus. Your translation may not say it any different. Diane's not here to share her translation, which is different completely than ours, or at least the one I have. But verse 9 says, let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil. Cling to what is good. Those are three separate statements, and sometimes we want to run them together. Let's take them one at a time. Let love be without hypocrisy. You could even say it like this: love without hypocrisy. When you're living sacrifice, you love from a heart that isn't contradicting itself, isn't contradicting God's word or his love or his spirit or his promises. That kind of love is not humanly manufactured. So, have you ever seen love with hypocrisy? Double standards, if you will.
I reckon I have.
Of course we have. That's what the world does. Double standards, two-faced. They'll say one thing to some person, and then they'll say something else to somebody else and expect that that other person will embrace it, understand it, and the other person won't talk to the other one. But what happens, though, is when you play both sides against the middle ends up losing. I remember this story one time. His grandmother pulled her grandson aside, and he said, I'll tell you a secret. She said, of all my grandchildren, you're my favorite. Just don't tell nobody. I don't want anybody else to know. Don't tell them, because that's our secret. Can you keep that? Okay. 25 years, he kept that secret. And one day, one of his siblings let out that they were his grandmother's favorite. He said, no, I am. She pulled me aside and said, I'm the favorite. And they looked at each other, and the other sibling started smiling real big and said, you do know that she pulled every grandchild aside and said that, right? You do know that, don't you? And he goes, no. I kept it a secret. Never talked to anybody
For
about it.
25 years, I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So he went to his grandma and said, is this true? That you told each one of us? And she said, yes. He said, how can you do that? You know, if I'm, how can someone else be your favorite and me too? She said, you're all my favorite. Don't you ever forget that. But when we love, sometimes love is conditional, it's judgmental, it's not based on sacrificial giving, it's not based on love that transforms, it's a love that is self-generated. Self-generated love very rarely is going to get the work of God done. Basically, hypocrisy means that you say one thing and do something else. Or you say you're going to do something and you do something different. Whatever, how that looks. But it doesn't line up congruently in the person. Here's an example of that in the church. There are a lot of churches out there that say we welcome everybody. Everybody's welcome. But if you get someone in there that makes them uncomfortable, that doesn't fit in with their kind of thinking, gets noisy, they're going, well, I don't know if that person fits. But everybody's welcome. That's what we're supposed to say. But what do we really do? What is our true attitude? Now here's a tough question too. Have we as individuals or as a church ever said, we want you here, but acted like we didn't? I'll answer that question for you. Over the years, people have told me that they've not felt welcome here on occasion. They felt judged, or talked about, or gossiped about, rather than loved. And different people have done it at different times. But to be a living sacrifice, we have to set our own mindsets aside, our own opinions, our own beliefs, and love as Jesus did. Loves them all. Tries to make them better. Understands that they live in a situation in their life that may not be better. It may never get better, and it may never come to the faith, but Jesus never gave up on people. I never saw him give up on anyone. He may have got frustrated with them, argued with them. He might have looked at the young man walking away who was the rich young ruler, walking away and rejecting Jesus, but it says Jesus looked at him as he walked away and loved him, even when he was rejected. So there's a lot of different things that love with hypocrisy happens. I know on my school bus, not that this matters much, but one kid said, man, I like everybody on this bus. And his kids are getting off the bus. He looked at one of the kids and said, I can't stand you. And I'm going, wait a minute, do you like everybody on the bus or everybody but that one? Another kid comes by. You know, I wish you didn't ride my bus. I wish you didn't come to my school. I don't want you around me. And I looked at that kid and I said, thought you liked everybody on the bus. Oh, I do. Well, except them two, and maybe a couple of them over here. And all of a sudden, their tone changes when you put it into real context. Kids are good like that. You know exactly how they feel about things. They don't have a whole lot of filters. But we as adults, sometimes we don't even know if we love well. There's been people in relationships who said they loved each other, but they didn't even know what it meant. Abusive relationships, harsh relationships. We love each other. Well, how do you know? What do you mean, how do I know? Because they said so. But saying so and doing so are two different things. So love has to be consistent with the love of Christ to not be hypocritical. And to be a living sacrifice, another way to say that is to be a loving sacrifice. Then he says, abhor what is evil. It doesn't mean people. Okay? There are some evil people in this world, some pretty wicked, for lack of a better word, just unstable people in this world. And we don't hate the people, but we abhor what has happened to them, what has come upon them. It only makes sense because if you hate the person, you'll never give them a chance to get peace. And Jesus Christ can restore every soul back to the Father. He can do that. So if we abhor or hate what is evil, it means that we hate what caused that in that person. But the person, we do not. I've heard it said like this, and I don't like this phrase, hate the sin, love the sinner. You ever heard that? Love the sinner, hate the sin. That makes no sense to me. That makes no sense whatsoever. Because the sinner's the one who's doing the sinning. If you hate what they do, then you're hating them too. But if you love them, then you don't see what they're doing as sin. You see that as misdirected. And a lot of people are misdirected in our world. Would you not agree? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people misdirected. I've worked with a lot of different people, and one of the things I told one of them was, you know, you have great energy, but right now it's misdirected and you're hurting yourself and everybody else with it. You'd be a great leader if you could just focus that in and hone it and use it for God. You'd be a great, great leader. And they didn't think that that was possible until I said so. And no one ever pointed them and redirected them toward what they could be. With the tools and gifts they already have, instead of using it for one thing, use it for good in this world. So I didn't hate his energy. I just wanted to redirect it. And sometimes it works when you do that. Sometimes it doesn't. And here's the second part of that. Actually, there's three parts. Love without hypocrisy, hate what's evil, and then cling to what's good. I think I'm an eternal optimist, except for when I'm moody. Or when things look bad, and sometimes it's difficult to be an optimist. But he says, cling to what is good. But what happens for me is I see the good in people quicker than I see the bad. I see the bad for sure. And I don't question that it's ungodly. But I'm not looking for that. That's obvious. What I'm looking for is the spark inside of them that says God can redeem this person, that they have some good value in them that God has put there. And I want to find it. If they don't know it's there, I want them to be able to learn that it's there and then to live out of that part of themselves. I want to cling to that good in them. For example, I think she's a fourth grader on my bus. And early on in the year, she was very, very helpful. Helped to calm some kids down, get things done. And as the time went on, because I'd given her some permission to help with that, she began to take advantage of those freedoms. And she started running around the bus, moving seats, and just causing commotion. And I looked at her and I said, "You're not doing that." She said, "But I needed this." I said, "You're not doing that. You didn't ask me if you could. You didn't get permission. And what you're doing isn't helping." And she said, but, and she tried to justify her behavior. "But I need to do that." I said, "Did you ask?" "No." I said, "Then don't do it without asking." So she started asking after that. But what I'm trying to say is she started out really good and then started going the wrong direction and she had to be redirected. But I knew there was good there. And I had to pull her back to that person, to cling and hope that she was still going to be that person later, rather than taking the freedom that she had been given, which is what we do. We take the freedom God gives us and use it for corruption, rather than for manifesting the kingdom of God. This almost sounds like fruit of the Spirit. We go through these, but verse 10, be kindly affectionate to one another with brotherly love. Does your translation say it any different?
To show family affection to one another and brotherly love.
Friendly?
Family.
Family affection and brotherly love. Okay.
Show family affection.
Mm-hmm. What do you think that means, to show family affection or kindly affection to one another with brotherly love? What does brotherly love mean?
Well, you try to help them like you would a brother. Give them support when you can. Hold them accountable when you have to.
Yeah, us Masons are real big on that.
What's brotherly
We
love?
call each other brother.
Mm-hmm.
With friendship and brotherly love. And it's right out of the Bible.
Right. And what's the difference between love and brotherly love?
I look at it as like a sibling love. If you have a physical brother or sister or family, your siblings, you have a different kind of love for them than you do for everyone else. And I think that's what it's literally a family type love. Like you love your brothers and sisters, your physical brothers and sisters. Most people do anyway. Yeah. Although they don't seem like they do sometimes.
Yeah.
But you have a bond there that's inseparable, that never goes away. And that's, to me, is what brotherly love is. It's a type of love that cannot end. As long as they exist, they're still your brother or your sister or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that means to me, anyway.
Okay.
It's a type of love that is unending.
Okay. Anything to add to that, anybody?
Well, see, I have no siblings. Well, the one I've never met, but that's, as close a definition as I could come to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because my family's love was conditional.
Yes, it was.
As long as I've not talked to any of my family, which I've always said this is my family now. But my actual family, I've not seen since my mother passed away.
And that's been how long?
7 years, 8 years, 9 years. Yeah.
Well, it's like when I was a kid, I was raised in a Baptist church. We called everyone in the church brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so. It's the same thing. If you're in a body of a church, you have a form of sibling love because you're in the family of Christ or of God. That's what that alludes to. And like me, I have 3 sisters. I have a form of love for them that I don't have for anyone else because they're my only sisters, and they always will be. No matter what they do, what happens, that will always be there.
Correct. So, kindly or family affectionate is part of this brotherly love. We don't usually use phrases like kindly affectionate or family affectionate, do we? Yeah, I have this family affection for you. We just don't say that.
No.
So how does that pull into the brotherly love? What do you think?
Well, like in the Masons, we do say that.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a Masonic brother, he is literally my brother.
And the important thing that many people don't know about is it could break someday and no longer be a brother. You're always going to be brothers. And I'll explain to you what I mean by that. I had a friend, he's long since deceased. He was one of the churches I was pastoring in Illinois. And he was a Mason. And he was overseas in the military. And he got run out. He's walking through the countryside and winds up in this little village where he doesn't know anybody. I mean, obviously, not from there, overseas. And a guy spots him and has a conversation with him and says, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, I don't know where I am or how to get back to where I belong, but I'm in the military and I need to get back to that." And the guy says, "Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pay for your cab, get you a meal, get your clothes clean. I'm going to do all that. I'm going to take care of you." He says, "Okay, thanks." He said, "When we get back to the base where I got to go, we'll make sure that you get reimbursed." He gets him back to the base, and all the things are back in order, and he drops him off. And this guy spent hours and hours and hours with this guy, and drops him off. And he says, "Okay, well, let me get somebody." He says, "Nope." He points to the ring. And he points to his ring, and he says, "We're brothers." Never met him, never see him again. But they're brothers.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's what we're talking about here. That you know that a Christian over here is the same affiliation of a Christian over here. Because if you're both Christians, you love each other without question. And that affection means the family affection, kindly affection. Basically, that means that we meet each other in love and support and lift each other up and help each other in situations where stuff gets tough or when things are hard. The church's task is to show its members how to love better, how to love each other through the struggles, the trials, all the difficult things. But what happens is love becomes with hypocrisy in the church, and they stop doing that. People over here mad at the people over there, almost as bad as Mason-Dixon feud, And it can be that way. Churches can split over that. And it's sad because that is, they say, well, I belong to this church, but I don't want any part to do with that person. That's a hypocritical love. Because when we take the vow of membership in a church, we say, I'm going to pray, support, and love, and encourage each person in that church on a regular basis to help them be the best person they can be. And if we say, well, I don't get along with this person, I don't get along with that person, I don't like this person, I don't like that person, well, Paul says, put that stuff as a living sacrifice. Get rid of that. So you can determine the perfect will of God, not your self-will. Because self-will, basically running riot, destroys a lot of things. And so kindly affectionate means is that we love each other and we help each other and encourage each other regardless of the interaction socially, whether we like each other or not. In certain ways, because of the flesh, we still love each other. But you're going to hear a lot of people say, I can't be around that person because I'm jealous, or I'm mad at that person, or I can't stand this person. And I promise you that has no place in the kingdom of God. That is love with hypocrisy. I belong to Jesus, but I don't love them. 1 John says, you say you love God, but you don't love your brother, your fellow brother in Christ, then you're a liar, because you can't say you love God and hate your brother. Because if you love God, that love is within you to love. And if you're loving God, then that same love extends to the people God loves, which are all of them. So he says, be kind to each other with this brotherly love. Now, it doesn't say, you guys need to be nice to the people in the church. People outside the church don't believe in Jesus. You ain't got to worry about them. You don't have to be nice to them. It doesn't say that.
That's the one you got to work on the most.
Those are sometimes the hardest people to love. Sometimes the hardest people to love are in the church. or go to church. Or should be in church. However you want to say that. But it's true. And then he says the rest of that verse. And now it begins to make sense. In honor, giving preference to one another. Now, preference does not mean the other person is better. It does not mean that. It doesn't mean that you're worse. Preference means that you prefer the other person to be blessed and you want to be a part of that blessing. Honoring them that way. Oh, here's the thing we miss in our society, because our society is not a shame-based society. We can kind of understand it, but not really. Our society is more a reward society. You work, you do your job, you get rewarded. If you don't do your job, then or you're lazy or whatever, then our society looks down on people like that. But they call them sluggards, lazy people. Our society regards and honors those who have gifts and talents and uses them and actually reveres them. Puts them on a pedestal and says, wow, that person's amazing. I wish I could talk to them, be their friend kind of thing. They honor them, but those who can't contribute to their life, that don't contribute to the world, they don't want anything to do with them because they just drag people down, kind of like that. But in their society, it's a shame-based society. It's honor and shame. Honor is given to someone in their society who has a certain level of family status. So if you're born into a certain family, you automatically have honor, depending on which family it is, but it's a level of honor. If you're born into a poor family or a broke family or a destitute family, you're born with shame because that family's shame-filled. And the problem with that honor and shame society is wherever you're born into that honorable or dishonorable family, shame family, you can't get out of it. You can't get out of it because that's your family. Your family's worked in the vineyards all their life. They're never going to be wealthy or landowners, because if you're a landowner in Israel, you're doing something because they don't own land anymore. But if you're a landowner or a business owner, or you have a lot of money and you've invested in that, there's honor there. And that family is an honorable family. This one over here, just a day-to-day worker, you never get out of the kitchen in the restaurant or whatever, just doing the same thing over and over again without being a business owner or anything like that. They're considered common laborers, and they consider that shame-filled. Now, here's what Paul says to that. In honor, giving preference to another. With honor, giving preference to other people. Does he say to give honor to those who are honorable? Or does he say to give honor to those who you come across?
Some says, outdo one another in showing honor.
Outdo and showing honor to who? Not to the honorable, to people who are not honorable. To giving them a place. One of my favorite passages I've been thinking about recently, there's a story Jesus tells about a wedding. And everybody's at the wedding. There's an empty seat. A guy goes in and he sits down. And later on, someone with more honor comes in and they make that guy move out of that seat down to a seat of lower position. And that has shamed him by doing that instead of sitting in the place where he should have been sitting. So Jesus says, when you enter a feast, sit in a lower place, honoring others to be more higher than you in that place, so that the host of the wedding, when he comes to you, might look at you and raise you up from that low place you've been and put you in a higher place. It just says, so always give the honor to everyone around you and take the lower, more humble spot, and then let others move you up in estimate. There are a lot of people that want to make themselves look good in our society and talk about themselves, how wonderful they are. You know, it's like, I'm God's gift to you type thing. You know, you should like me because I'm important. But Jesus and Paul says it the other way. Give that honor to someone else. Continuously giving preference. That's what it means by preference. That everybody else has a better place and position than you. It doesn't mean you move out of your home because you've got a nice home. It doesn't mean that. It means that you give other people the honor that is usually reserved for people who are honorable in their society. So you don't take someone who's other people call the scum of the earth and go, you know, you're the scum of the earth, you aren't worth my time. But rather, we look at them and say, let me help you. Let me have this seat. Let me bless you. Let me give you favor. And sometimes that's not easy because everything in us contradicts that. Verse 11, not lagging in diligence. Diligence. What's diligence?
Staying after.
Do what's due diligence. If you're giving something that's due diligence, what do you do?
King James says not slothful in business.
In business, okay.
Which means pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. Not lagging in diligence. If I were to give diligence to something or to someone, what am I doing?
Giving your time and effort.
You're being sincere and diligent, which means thorough.
Thorough, yes. So thorough in terms of what? How many people do we come across, we think we know them just by looking at them or talking to them?
Not reading the book by its cover, but
Right.
But
Doing our diligence with each person in each situation before we act and do what we need to do in that situation, to making sure we have used discernment.
Be quick to listen, slow to speak.
Yes. That would be a good way to say that. I like that. I tell a story, and this was like one of those moments when I should have done better due diligence or done diligence. And it was last October when your wedding. I'm sitting across the table from a lady. I don't know who she is. I mean, I may have seen her once, but I couldn't remember who she was. I'm thinking, well, it's just a lady coming to the wedding, you know, and all this. And so I'm just talking and being flippant with my comments, you know, relax with it. And I said, I'm sorry for being rude, but can I introduce you? I'm the pastor here. And she goes, I know. I said, you do? She says, yeah, I know. And I said, well, tell me your name. She goes, Cindy Cash. I went, an influential person in our area. I'm treating her like just a common person, like who comes to a food pantry. Thinking that in my head, that she doesn't have any ability to influence. And as soon as I found out who it was, I started backtracking and started going, well, let me start. How can I rearrange this to talk about how maybe she can help the church? You know, but it was too late. So I didn't do due diligence before I started making my comments. And once I did, it was too late to direct the conversation to a more sane location and direction. So I didn't do due diligence. And I didn't give diligence, but rather lagged in it in that moment. Because as soon as she told me, I went, oh gosh, yeah, I remember now. Because I did. I met her one time, many years ago, at an auction. And that's the only time I'd ever met her. And so I didn't remember who she was. Because we don't know when we might entertain angels.
Exactly.
Or angels might be willing to entertain us. So always giving honor to each person we speak.
Paul said, always respect strangers because you don't know if they're angels or not.
Mm-hmm. Had a conversation, this is not so bad, conversation with the person at Panera Bread. I go in there many times a week when I'm after route in the morning. There's a guy in there, and he looked like a pastor. I didn't ask him that. I didn't say he did. I just had conversations with him, thinking maybe we're speaking the same language. And finally, I said, tell me, what kind of work are you in? And he said, I'm an attorney. And I was really glad that I didn't think he was a pastor, that I got that information. And he's a very well-respected person in Paducah, extremely well-respected. And my own attitude could have, had I gone the wrong direction with the conversation. But instead, I practiced diligence. And I treated him, before I knew who he was, as a person of worth and merit. Because if he was the pastor I thought he was, I was like, this guy don't know how to preach, you know, but I wasn't going to talk about that. And it wasn't that pastor. And so I was thankful that I did diligence. But I also didn't abandon the conversation while learning. So he says we got to be diligent in all situations because we don't know who it might be. Now this guy, from what I understand, could actually make a difference even here in our church if he came alongside us. Because he's a wealthy man, very wealthy. I've been to, like, when my wife was singing in the concert, symphony choir, we'd be invited to after symphony events at people's homes. I had no idea whose homes I was going into. I said, well, it's a nice house, you know, and just saying things like that, not realizing I'm talking to John Williams. If you don't know who John Williams is, you don't know Paducah. And John Williams Jr., both homes that I'd been in. I had no idea I was walking into someone who's very highly influential in that city. And talking to him, I was just talking to him casually. It was kind of weird to know later, did you know that was John Williams? I'm going, no. But I was fervent with him. I was excited about his home, and I'm saying, man, this is awesome. And he said, take a look around if you want. And I said, you sure? You okay with that? And he was very okay with that. And so I got to be a part of who he is, and now when he sees me, we're friends. And it's awesome. Because of diligence. Fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. Now that is a tricky statement. Fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. There's people who got fervent in spirit, but they're not serving the Lord. But be full of the energy that God gives. Enthusiastic about loving others and serving God. Serving the Lord is a key point right here. How in the world would you think that a person who's having a conversation with somebody else could actually be serving the Lord instead of just having a conversation?
What's the way you talk to them, the way you treat them, and the way you treat them like God would treat, Jesus would treat them. That's serving the Lord.
How did Jesus treat him?
With love, respect,
Humility.
humility,
With honesty.
yeah.
Jesus was no respecter of persons. He treated everyone on the same level. And so, if we are speaking to each person with honor, which is the level Jesus was seeing them as, with honor, and we speak to everyone on that level, we'll never have to make an excuse for anything we say. But we're not doing it so that other people are upset or not upset with us. We're doing it because we want to honor others, because we honor God. When I was a young man, we lived next to a banker, Banker Gray. My parents were always going, don't make him mad, he's a banker, he's rich, type thing, right? Well, because he was a banker, I always thought, well, that must mean that we're no good to him. And so the only time I ever saw his door of his house or knocked on it was trick or treat. And he would know me, of course, because he always saw me playing in my driveway, which belonged inside of his house. And he would be very kind, welcome me into his home, offer me something for Halloween, and he'd say, hey, well, what's your name? And he'd ask me each year, and then I go on my way. And I'm thinking, I don't know how to talk to this guy because he's better than us. He's got stuff we'll never have. He's got a big, beautiful house and many nice things, and I'm afraid to go in unless I break something, and then whatever happens after that, my parents will kill me, all that stuff. But I elevated him to a level that wasn't what it was his. It's to honor people on the same level. Not this person's more honorable, this person I got to be more respectful to, but all people the same level. And some people, it's really easy to do that. And some people who we hold in high esteem, it's harder to put them on the same playing field. And people we hold in low esteem, or that we don't care for, it's hard to bring them up and treat them honorably. But with a fervent spirit doing that, because we're serving the Lord. Otherwise, we're serving our own self-interest and our own self-feelings about how things are. And verse 12, rejoicing in hope. Patient in tribulation and continuing steadfastly in prayer. Those three go together. Rejoicing in hope, patient in tough situations, persevering, if you will, and continuing steadfast in prayer. Rejoicing in hope and steadfast through tribulation. What's that mean? What kind of hope are we rejoicing in? What kind of tribulations are we patient through? This is a tough one. I can give you a hint on a situation that happened for me. I came across a person one time who had a severe mental illness. And it was really, really difficult to work with that person. Everything was a crisis, a problem, and my fault. I knew it wasn't, but they didn't because they had a mental illness. Now, did you think I was rejoicing in hope or patient in tribulation?
Patient tribulation.
I had to persevere, didn't I?
Yeah.
What was my normal reaction have been to that person had I had a little bit of God inside of me?
Frustration.
Get me someone else to work with. I can't work with this person. They're impossible. That's exactly what was screaming through my head. I don't want to be here. Get him out of here. I can't put up with this mess. And so I had to pray when I was around that person. And after a while, I began to see them as a brother. And I realized their struggles were their struggles, not mine. That they were having it worse than me because they're living through inside their own body and emotions every day. So as soon as I'm depart from them, it's gone from me, but they're still having it. And so I had to learn to pray that God would somehow bring an easier life for them. To rejoice in the fact that there's hope for them. Boy, they're a mess, but one day God could change it. They're driving me nuts, but I'm patient through that because God could really work through me to maybe reach this person for his kingdom. Maybe God will use me. Maybe I'll be that one person in their whole life that ever reaches out to them and loves them as they are and helps them to see grace. Fact of the matter is, first couple of times we talked, he told me, get out of here. I don't want to talk to you. My life is none of your business. That kind of attitude, right? Kept working with him anyway. I didn't quit the job. I didn't say, give me somebody else to work with. I don't want to work with this cat. I didn't do any of that. I said, God, I believe you can reach him through me. I hope that this guy's life can turn around. You know, I've known this guy now for 8 years. 8 years. And 5 years ago, I invited him to be my friend and invited him into my circle of friends. And he looked at me like, why would you do that? And I said, because you're my worker. I work with you. And I know you need some healthy friends. You don't have anybody who supports you and stands in your corner with you, besides me. As soon as I said that, he said, you know, you're right. I've been working 5 years and you never rejected me, told me to get out of town, and I've told you that. I don't understand why. I said, because I believe in you. I believe God's in you, and God can transform your life. And I know he can because I've seen it happen. And 8 years later now, he's got a decent life. He's moved forward with his life, and he no longer is the same kind of person because I rejoiced in hope for him. Had my flesh won out, I wouldn't have been around the guy more than another day. But I had to pray, and he became a different person. Still in transformation, but he's much more relaxed, and he can make friends on his own now. And he has. It's kind of neat. So verse 13 ends the sentence, so we'll cover that. It says, distributing to the needs of the saints and given to hospitality. Or pursuing hospitality, if you would prefer to use that instead of given to it. I would say that we as a church do well to give needs to people, to meet needs with food, clothing, items. I think we do well with that. And you know what? I think we're really good about that, and we don't require them to be a believer.
No.
We don't. We don't require them to be a member of our church. It says giving and distributing to the saints, to their needs. Now, how many of those people that come into our pantry would we think, well, they're probably not loving Jesus? And we might be wrong on more than one occasion. And so if we distribute need of food, clothing, household items to people without charge, you think maybe somehow we're actually going to catch a saint in there?
Of course.
Of course we will. There'll be some people who love Jesus there, and we can't shut them out just because we know some aren't. And so we distribute to the needs of people. Yeah. This word saint, you know what that word means?
Not a clue. I mean, I know what saints are.
What's a saint?
Well, it's somebody who has been dedicated their entire life to the spread of the word of the gospel and loving God's people.
Could be. Could be a definition. It's not what he means by saint. Anybody else got an idea what that saint means?
My Bible doesn't say anything about saint.
Does it use the word saint?
King James does.
What does your verse 13 say, Junior?
Share with God's people who are in need and welcome others into your homes.
There you go. She got the definition for saint for you. It's God's people. It's God's people. And welcome the others who are not God's people into your home. Why would we do that?
I mean, we're supposed to love everybody.
But why would we welcome people who are not God's people into our home?
To show them the love of God.
That's one thing.
Who are not God's people?
Right.
The ones who deny Him?
How do you know that?
Don't do it.
No.
But even if they deny him, you would still invite them in. I mean, you know, you would still invite them into your home, even though they have denied God. That don't mean they might someday not deny him, you know.
Right. What does Jesus say? But a cup of water given in my name, you'll by no means lose a reward. So hospitality given in the name of Jesus. Anyone distributing to a need, as simple as a cup of water, or as complex as something else. And yet, we're so hesitant to even give a dollar bill to a homeless guy on the corner, thinking he's going to misuse it.
Right.
But God never asked us to discern their use. He asked us to love and do our diligence. And if you're really going to question whether they're going to use it for, you're going to have to follow them around for a while. Otherwise, you have to trust that God put it on your heart and you do it. Because I know a lot of people who are homeless. I've met a lot of them. I was one of them. And they're not trying to make their life an addicted mess. They're trying to make it through the day to try to get back on their feet and make it to a new life. A lot of them like that. And who am I to say? Or who are we to say? Not that one.
We don't decide who's worthy of it.
Because we're not. It's not our place to do that.
And why is this? Because in honor, giving that person honor, treating them like they're human, valuable, and worthwhile to every single soul, not just the people who can influence and make a difference in the world around us, but even people who can't and won't. This is what it means to be a living sacrifice.